Welcome to Behind the Investigation. I'm Better Call Harry here with investigative reporter Andy Parati. Andy, let's talk about this story because I can't believe that the man, the father that you focus on, that he rejected a plea deal on this story. So I leave it there. You kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating story that I've been tracking for the past 2 years. It's a case involving something widely reported as something that really needs another look at. Shaken baby syndrome diagnosis. 20 years ago, a man named Danielle Smith in Gwinnett County was arrested and convicted of killing his infant son. The prosecutors told the jury it was a shaken baby case. Well, since then, 20 years later, the science has drastically changed in how we look at blunt force trauma and the brain injuries that infants can have. We used to think that they were all because of blunt force trauma. We now know that biological issues like strokes can contribute to the same issues. And so this man last year was offered a plea deal, get out of prison, just admit guilt. He refused, and now the case has taken another turn.
Let's go ahead and take a look.
Here I am 20 years later, back in your courtroom.
Daniel Smith pleads with a Gwinnett County judge this past April to grant him a new trial, more than 20 years after he's sentenced to life for the murder of his infant son.
But not every tragedy is a crime. I'm not a murderer. I killed my son, Chandler.
5 months later, his request denied.
It's very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Latasha Pyatt is Danielle's fiance. Throughout her home, symbols of hope.
Bam, welcome home. I have such a vision of the look he's gonna have on his face when he sees that.
A house full of his favorite things Danielle has never seen.
I think these are the last shoes he wore to court.
Clothes, cologne, and even a car. We first met Latasha 2 years ago. The closet storing her wedding dress has changed, but not her commitment to a man she's never known outside prison walls. They met nearly 10 years ago, engaged for those years, with no certainty she'll ever walk down the aisle.
How often do you look at this dress?
Very often. I even try it on, often. I met Danielle July 3rd, 2015. I didn't blink then. I'm not blinking now. You don't give up. You just don't throw your hands up and give up, especially when you know somebody's innocent.
Latasha knows what a lot of people are thinking. Why is she in a relationship with a convicted murderer with no guarantee he'll ever be free from behind bars? Her response? Look at the evidence.
In 2003, a Gwinnett County jury convicted Danielle of murdering his 2-month-old son, Chandler. The state's medical examiner ruled the boy's death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. Prosecutors told the jury it was a shaken baby case.
We're the experts in the brain, not the child abuse pediatrician.
Dr. Saeed Katan is a pediatric neurosurgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. He and 7 other medical experts testified on Danielle's behalf this past April during a hearing requesting a new trial. After reviewing the child's medical records, the doctor believes Chandler didn't die from shaking, but likely from trauma during birth.
And you see stroke in this case, and if you see stroke and you see any hemorrhage, then you can see retinal hemorrhage, and it's not suggestive of abuse.
Dispatch records show 2 weeks before Chandler's death, his mother called 911 after she thought the child was coming in and out of a seizure. Chandler was born premature at 36 weeks. Paramedics dismissed her concern, saying the baby was just having hiccups.
This looks nothing like somebody who was abused. It looks like somebody who had hypoxic ischemic brain damage.
For decades, pediatric traumatic brain injuries could only be explained with blunt force trauma, like car accidents, falls, or violently shaking a child. Today, new science shows those same injuries can be linked to illnesses and biological issues, like seizure disorders. Since 2019, nearly 24 people charged with crimes connected to shaken baby syndrome diagnoses have had their convictions overturned or their cases dismissed.
Remain seated, come to order.
While the judge denied Danielle's request for a new trial, the Georgia Supreme Court recently gave him a second chance, agreeing to hear his case later this year to determine whether he deserves a new trial based on the new expert medical testimony. Mark London Brown is Danielle's attorney. In support of his appeal, the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers sent this letter to the state Supreme Court.
They write this quote, "This was not a he said, she said type of case. It was a he said, and the experts said, and the scientific community said, and multiple courts have subsequently said type of case." I thought that was a really nice way to say it in support of our position. Like, the science and the courts continue to overwhelmingly say that diagnoses of the kind that was used to convict Mr. Smith are unreliable and should be remedied.
One person who doesn't believe Danielle deserves a second trial, his ex-girlfriend, Chandler's mother.
Those things didn't just happen, and those weren't natural causes. But what I am sure of is that Chandler died at the hands of Danielle Smith.
While Danielle and Latasha wait for the Georgia Supreme Court's ruling, he could be free today. In 2023, the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office offered him a rare deal to go home. But there was a catch. He had to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter and admit guilt. Danielle refused. Here's what he said in court in April, before he knew the judge would deny his request for a new trial.
I asked myself if I could live with that decision for the rest of my life. The answer to that question was no. Only a guilty man will plea out.
Does he regret not taking that plea deal?
No,
Do you wish he would have taken it?
no,
He'd be here today.
he would. But you know what? He would be here today on parole. Everywhere that he goes, he would have to ask them for permission. It's like he's still in prison.
It's an incredible story. You know, looking from the outside, you think, why not take a plea deal? I mean, how much time could he be facing? Well, I guess the rest of his life.
That's right. Yeah. I even asked this attorney, I said, would you have accepted that plea deal? And he says, well, for me, I would have. I mean, his own attorney admits he's got 2 young children. But for Danielle Smith, he simply could not live with himself, even being a free person. As you heard in the story,
Right.
his wife sort of compared it to as still being in prison, but being maybe outside of bars, but you're under probation and you're constantly under this umbrella of like people looking at you a different way rather than the DA's office or a judge reversing the decision. And so he's really adamant about having his day in court. And possibly, if the Georgia Supreme Court agrees that he deserves a new trial, either it will happen and a judge in Gwinnett County will be forced to have a new trial, take on a new trial, or the district attorney's office could simply walk away and say, we're not going to retry this case.
So going behind the scenes,
Yeah.
which is what we're all about. I mean, the reason that you were looking into this story, other than it's a compelling story,
Yeah.
do you think in your research that there's a chance that this could be overturned? Are there enough people behind him that he could get another trial?
I mean, 48 law professors sent essentially a letter of support in the court filing saying to the Supreme Court, hey, based on the rule of law and how we see shaken baby syndrome diagnoses and how they're inherently flawed, and in looking at multiple, almost 24 cases of individuals who've had their cases overturned because of flawed diagnoses, here's the evidence. We believe that this man deserves a new trial. And not only that, we believe he's innocent. So the short answer is I believe that he has a strong chance at getting, at the Supreme Court giving him a new trial.
But I mean, but the saying, he's gambling with his life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually true here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you're going to continue to follow on this story. Anything else you want to add on this one that I forgot to ask you about?
No, I just, it's one of these, I was talking to a friend over the weekend about this case, and I said, just the facts about the case alone are fascinating enough. But then you add in the element of a woman that he met while in prison, that he's never known outside prison walls, that has sort of taken the torch to get his case overturned, for a man that she's never known outside of prison walls. She, as you saw in the story, she has an entire house full of things as if he lives there. You walk into this house, Harry, you think that
Wow.
this man is living there. They have initials everywhere, all around the house, from the rug to pillows to pictures. You saw the closet full of clothes that he's never worn. He's got a car waiting for him that she bought for him years ago that he has never driven. And another thing that I've never even reported is that a couple years ago, he also has a son. He's a grown man now. But a couple years ago, he was having issues in high school. And he asked Latasha, his fiance, again, a woman he's never known outside of prison walls, to help his son. And she adopted him. She legally adopted him and lived, and this young man lived with her for a number of years until he graduated high school and even post high school. So that story in itself was also fascinating. So you combine them and you're like,
Right.
holy cow, this was a story that, and I still can't stop thinking about it. And we'll see what happens. She, as you saw, she's got a wedding dress, a $4,000 wedding dress, and she does not know whether she's ever going to wear that thing down the aisle.
They could still get married though, couldn't they? Or can they get married if he's got a life sentence?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I do know that it's not guaranteed she may be able to walk down an aisle with him.
I mean, you really could do probably a whole documentary just on the whole relationship.
And there is a documentary. We're not producing it, but there is a documentary right now that is being filmed about this case. Every single time I go to a court hearing about this, I see that documentary filmmaker and his crew there. So, yeah, we're going to see a documentary. What the ending looks like is still to be written.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for that amazing story. And I want to remind everybody else, this is why we do this, so you can get a little insight. And I got to remember to ask that question again, Andy. It was very simple. Did I forget to ask you something? And remember, you can, correct me to make sure I get this right, you can listen to all of our podcasts online on your favorite podcast app. Did I get that
Yeah,
right?
you got that right.
See, I'm looking
Multiple
over here
stories
'cause
on
it's
this
over here.
on this exact case. Multiple over the past 2 years.
Multiple. Go ahead and take a look at them. They're worth viewing. And then plus, you can take a look at also all the other Atlanta News First investigations. Thank you very much, Andy, for joining us. And we'll see you guys next time.